visited. I am Karakura Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis of the art as well as the narrative, and giving personal response to each of these chapters. We'll also be talking about how the chapter connects to the rest of the series as a whole. As usual, we begin the video with a reading of the chapter that we are discussing for this episode. This is Chapter 92, Masterly and Farewell, Reprise. Ah! My hand! Ah! My hand! Wow, Uryu. He's like a completely different person from the Uryu who fought Ichigo. Bleach, Chapter 92, Masterly and Farewell, Reprise. You! Are you feeling a little regret now? For a weapons master such as yourself, it was a tragedy that you had to meet me. Me? Regret? Why, you imp! I told you, it is you who will regret. So, since you can't kill me, you thought you'd get Orihime, eh? Or take her hostage? Actually, you've been after her from the very beginning. Even you couldn't be so clumsy that you keep endangering the girl by accident. No one with a shred of honor fights like that. Impressive. Goodbye. Allowing you time for regret would be a waste. Oh! Thanks, Uryu. No need to thank me. It was nothing, right? Is he dead? No. I just destroyed his Sakatsu chain and Hakusui soul sleep, the spots that govern his spiritual powers. He'll live, but his spiritual powers are gone, and he'll probably never be a soul reaper again. This battle is over. Shall we go? Okay. Mr. Yorichi said that Quincy's fight by gathering spiritual particles called reishi to them. That glove must increase his ability to gather reishi. It was so powerful that he knew he couldn't control it. He didn't want to hurt us. That's why he trained alone. For Uryu to control it so well, for him to be able to fight like that, after only 10 days, all on his own, is amazing. What did I accomplish in those last 10 days? I don't feel any stronger at all. Whoa! Why me? Why is it always me? How come they always chase me? Oh, you sideburn monkey! Stop running! You ugly fool! Hey! Who you calling ugly? Okay, I admit that other guy was a looker, but you're all just as ugly as I am. What? I'll carve you up, ugly boy. Ugly, ugly, ugly. Darn, I don't think I'm gonna win this argument. Ichigo, you've come to back me up. Perfect timing. Oh, hey, Ganju, what's up? Hey, wait, you're being chased too? What good are you? Stop waving, you moron. He's waving. That's his friend. Kill him too. You're only making those gentlemen behind you angry. Don't come this way. Whoa! Here I come, Ganju. Duck! Huh? Whoa. That sound. What's going on over there? You! Stop talking! This isn't a drill! Yes, sir! Excuse me, sir! 4th Company, Unohana Relief Crew, 1st, 6th, and 14th Squads. I got yelled at again. Will arrive momentarily. That was too close, you fool! Don't go swinging that thing around without warning people! Are you crazy? I told you to duck! You didn't give me enough time! You could have killed me! So, what now? That only worked because you took them by surprise. You may have knocked them around a little, but I don't think they're gonna retreat. Not these guys. Oh no. I just stopped when I tie my sandal. Where'd everybody go? Oh, I'll ask them. Excuse me. I'm with the fourth company. Oh, whoa! Ah! What are you doing, boy? I'm sorry. Who are you? Get away from there. Oh! Stop wandering around. I'm sorry. Oh! What's going on? Don't touch me. Do you want to die? Ah! Oh. Ichigo, I just thought of a way out of this. Yeah, me too. Hello? And that is it for Bleach 91. What is it, Masterly and Farewell? Reprise? Am I getting it right? Did I correctly remember what I read only 19 pages before? Could I possibly have short-term memory? Masterly and Farewell Reprise, yes. Chapter 92. Oh yeah, I can things. I can actually remember things. Again, these are unscripted videos, folks. These are one take. I do what I can to ease my burden and to make a less professional product that exists the test of time for you to enjoy at any time. But again, as I've said before, I feel like it's a little bit more honest. I think it's a little bit more earnest, and I don't like the polished way a lot of people do things. There's just something like inhuman. Like people with these scripts, these scripts. Who needs a script? That said, let's get into the video. Let's talk about what's going on artistically, narratively. And I think one of the really big things here is that we get some gore that notably I'm pretty sure is not present in the anime. So the anime, whenever they talk about censoring things, a lot of the violence from Bleach doesn't appear in the anime, and that's I don't know. There you can have different arguments on it one way or another. I ultimately feel like the kind of graphic nature of what's on display serves the narrative because of the danger that these characters are getting involved in, and it really helps to like juxtapose the situations that they normally are in versus these very high tension kind of battles that they get involved in, basically. You want to really present the fact that these characters are pushing themselves to the brink of life and death. And so having Uryu maim Jirobo here is really striking. I mean, we haven't seen Uryu inflict a wound on ostensibly another human like this, period, like at all. So it's striking, and it's a visual that I think helps to supplement kind of narratively what's happening. And I think that's one of the things. Like Kubo certainly could go a lot more graphic whenever it comes to the violence in the series. There are some pretty graphic scenes, especially as we get later and later on. And, these fights have to be ramped up and amped up and made more severe. But that said, there's always a sense that it fits the scene and that it's not just gratuitous. And I like that here, especially that we do get this character who, it's really interesting. We saw him like basically force his hand down on his sword in order to activate his Shikai to release his weapon, the Garasu, right? And so seeing that same hand wounded in this way is striking, I feel, especially whenever we saw him kind of using his hand to guide his blades, but now his hand is grievously injured, and I think that's intentional by Uryu's part, right? I do love that we get this shot where we can see like a big chunk of it missing, and then we get the middle panel where we get like that kind of crescented, bloody kind of shot through the hand, and I think that's really like a fantastic way to open this chapter. Really sets the stage for what we've gotten before, which the last chapter was so much of this right to left conflict where we had Jirobo really owning a lot of the violence and it being perpetuated in the way that our protagonists typically do, right? As a Shinigami versus their opponent. And then Uryu is the one to blast this back at him and kind of take center stage. But here we come back, we get the title, which reprised for Masterly and Farewell. If you don't remember, that was just a few chapters ago. That was the chapter where Jirobo first appeared. Basically, Kaku had been defeated, and we transitioned away from both Ganju and Ichigo to Jirobo kind of creeping and getting that first slash, I think, against Uryu and Orihime. And so it's interesting that this chapter then does the same thing, but like in reverse, where we get the wrap up of Uryu Orihime's fight. We get the denouement, as you will, and then we cut back to a new scenario that kind of ends on a cliffhanger with Ichigo. So it makes sense. I don't know that the chapter title does that much. I don't know what he's trying to convey with Masterly. I mean, farewell makes sense because we're parting from one scene of characters to another, and Masterly maybe to discuss. Like here we're talking about like this weapon master, right? And so maybe there's this idea of like a mastery of a weapon, something of that sort. So it's not completely just an English title for the sake of one. Anyway, of course, the really neat thing about this outcome is Orihime gets very stricken by the fact that Uryu has changed so much in those 10 days, like practicing with the Sanrai glove, that he underwent this very dangerous training, and he's emerged as somebody very different. Here we get Kubo's very lanky early designs in full measure. I mean, this is an incredibly tall, slender design. Which I mean, in general, Uryu is a tall boy. He fits that mold. But I don't know if this passes the 7 heads test, right? Maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe I can if I do, that's about to the turn of my thumb. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hey, it kind of does actually. Never mind. I was about to really scrutinize, but no, he's 7 heads tall. So that's the typical like ratios, right? Of proportions, right? You want your characters to be about 7 heads tall, unless they're like super deformed or something like that, right? Unless they're in some chibi mode. So the proportions aren't too inaccurate. I think there's still certainly a slenderness to it. I can't fathom a lot of people that have a torso as slender as their head. Um, Typically, the torso is at least a little wider, right? Maybe it's a little wider here too. Maybe I'm just being overly critical, but certainly there's like a lankiness to the characters that I think it's attributed with early Bleach. Maybe not so much later on, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? Tell me what you feel about Bleach's art. That said, I do love the line shading Kubo has gotten a lot stronger with. I feel like just these parallel lines. I mean, if you zoom in, you can see that it's certainly sketchier. But I love at a glance from pretty far away, like this makes for effective sort of textured shading, and I think it's just good stuff. Aryu's got a cool outfit too. Aryu's got a cool design. Of course, we come back here and we get Uryu really laying down the law that that sort of thing that obviously Kubo must think this is cool because his cool characters do this all the time, but putting that back in their faces, right? Just, now you're the one feeling the regret, right? All of that. So we get a little bit of that. Of course, Jirobo goes to attack Orihime, and it speaks towards. Now there's like, yes, this is totally Uryu doing some white knight, protect Orihime, woman stuff, right? How dare you strike a woman, you foul person? But I mean, like here, I don't know that it's interesting because you could talk about whether or not it's gendered. And I think Uryu presents a pretty good argument of like, hey, before you even knew either of our prowess or anything, you were consistently going after her, right? So like you didn't know what either of us was capable of, but you've consistently kind of gone after Orihime. So that's like shows a pattern in the way that you are trying to kind of exploit her, which is probably probably born of kind of a sexist or patriarchal sort of mentality, right? that this woman is weak, that she can't protect herself, so on and so forth. Which, as we know, that's not the case. But Orihime comes from this encounter feeling like that is the case. So Jirobo has still affected her with his intent of, making her feel weak. I mean, he wasn't able to strike her, kill her, basically compromise Uryu by using her. Which is really interesting because here, Jirobo, I think it's kind of interesting. Uryu brings up this idea of taking her as a hostage, right? So this sense of, oh, okay, well, you're going to exploit her weakness, her femininity, because you can't kill Uryu. He's too cool of a guy, but you're going to take advantage of Orihime and use her as a hostage, probably, right? Uh, or wound her and use that as some sort of leverage. And so it's interesting that then on the flip side, later in the chapter, our protagonists do just that, but with a male Shinigami. It's kind of interesting. I'm not going to say that this is a hugely gendered sort of thing that's like woke or anything like that. I just think it kind of has some interesting intersections as far as like what do we consider righteous behavior, what do we consider sexist behavior, even is this sexually or like is this motivated by aspects of gender, or is this simply Jirobo sort of being cruel and trying to take advantage of somebody that he sees as defenseless. Like how I certainly feel like gender is played into it, at least from where I'm coming from, but it walks a line, certainly. Because Jirobo himself doesn't really lean too much into like any sort of sexist rhetoric or any sort of patriarchal rhetoric. I mean, he's certainly full of himself. He certainly has a lot of hubris, but that doesn't necessarily lean that way. So it certainly is curious, and it leaves me wondering, like, how much of this is Uryu's projection, right? And how much of this is like the actuality? Because I mean, we do know that the Soul Society tends to be a bit more patriarchal. I mean, its straight up leader is an old man. So whenever you've got an old white guy in charge, yeah, baby. Uh, but we also have seen the way that Rukia has been treated, and I don't know. It's interesting to think about like how gender roles might emerge in this world that is of spirits, right? And how women are kind of considered and function. So yeah, it's something that we'll have to like look at a little bit more as we go throughout the series. Ultimately, I think there are some people that take away that Bleach is kind of sexist in a few ways, and I think it presents a more nuanced take on a patriarchal sort of society and the ways in which power gets used and abused. And it's almost never I don't think Bleach ever tries to leverage these things in order to disparage or present female characters or women as less capable. Yes, Orihime is not as powerful as Uryu, but we have other female characters that we certainly have seen that we can assume are more powerful, right? Um, make Uryu fight Ururu. That's all I'm saying. Uryu Ururu 2022 to build that fight. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, I don't know how much of this is on Uryu's spot, or how much of this is, you know, what is it? How much of this is truly Jirobo being in this position? I don't know. What I do like a lot though is that like the use of these panels. The just straight up having like the pages of him attacking Orihime from before is whatever. But what I mostly mean is that we have Uryu kind of finally taking stage to the right. He's taking this right action. He is finally kind of the one guiding the right to left action of the page. So he's really coming to his own from the previous chapter. He's the one with the power and the control and the flow of the narrative here. And I love this extreme close up of Jirobo's face where we just get his eye. And then whenever Uryu fires the arrow, we get this real far zoom out, then zoom back in. And I just love the way that that is paneled out. I think it's very effective. And we get Uryu looking especially cold, especially sort of like almost hateful, or like he's just killing some sort of animal or something. I don't know. There's a certain, like, I don't know, serial killer vibes from this fella, but Uryu's got a face that could kill here, which I do like the expression work on Kubo. I think this chapter does a really good job, and I think Jirobo, although I don't like the way he looks, I'm not a fan of his steez. He does have some pretty expressive expressions. Um, and yeah, here we get the two shots. Which, now, if you remember, this is actually where Byakuya struck Ichigo, right, to seal his spiritual powers. So it's the same sort of thing that we saw a captain do to Ichigo. Uryu is capable of doing here to a Shinigami. And so it's kind of neat. It's like it's a reminder of something, like a technique that we knew existed already, but then the fact that Uryu is also able to manipulate that, which of course he would be because he fires arrows and he's a very precise shot, and he's very familiar with reishi and the spirits, and all of that. So the fact that he would be in the know and be able to strike those with precision kind of fits. And I think it's a cool aspect for the character. It gives him a neat sort of death blow move should he be able to land these very precise strikes. Any character ostensibly could be taken out by Uryu, which I do love that. Of course, we see Jirobo fly back with the two arrows through him. I also love the Sanrei glove ceiling here, where he flips it on its side and it just goes into the glove. I think that's really cool. Because we haven't seen him really form his bow yet, so seeing it go away, I think, works, and getting the sense that the entire bow, just like him, I mean, it's all composed of reishi. I mean, they're spiritual beings right now. They're Kenpaku, so it makes sense. But still, I think it's a cool device, nevertheless. And his bow with the Sanrei glove always feels a little bit more tangible and physical, even though I know it's still a spiritual, weapon. I do like this little back and forth between Uryu and Orihime. I think it's really cute that Uryu comes out of that seriousness with this whole push up the glasses, like, oh, well, don't have to thank me, it was nothing. And Orihime cuts him off by delivering the end of his line. It's a good bit, and she has a big smile about it, and you get the sense that Orihime understands Uryu a little bit more now, which I do like this. There's a lot of like little understated moments of like character bonding or character sort of interaction here, and I do love this just 4-panel moment. I think is really effective coming out of that battle. Of course, Jirobo, his whole career has been ended, like literally. I mean, I love to laugh about this fight because yes, Uryu does end this man's whole career. He does just pop him both in his soul chain and his soul sleep, right? Saketsu chain, Sake, Su, and Haku Sui. Sake or Saketsu? Probably Saketsu. Sake, Su, Haku Sui. Anyway, I don't know Japanese. Just a pretender out here. Anyway, but as you know, those are the two spots that govern your spiritual powers, and he hit both of them. So, with Jirobo losing his spiritual powers, assumingly he will still be a spirit. He'll just be one like, all the other spirits, all the other kind of outside souls outside the Seirete that we've seen. He'll probably never be a Soul Reaper again. He doesn't have someone like or a Urahara to train him up in a secret laboratory. Now this bit does have a bit of dialogue, although it sort of works for me. I love how isolated Uryu is presented here, and like we get like the really close shot of the glove, as well as this really far shot of Uryu of this sort of loneliness that he's taken on as a mantle of, he has to master this power, and so he's had to push other people away. And Bleach will often kind of meditate on the nature of like power and what it does to the people around you and why you seek power, right? Because we have all these characters that ostensibly they want to gain power, to protect people. But the problem is that as they become more powerful, it alienates and kind of pushes away the people that they wish that they could protect. And so this is a constant theme throughout Bleach, but one that we've seen before. We had the character poem about like the blade and eye. Um, but we'll continue to see this throughout the entirety of the series, and I do like this. Typically, I'm not a fan of like these dialogue heavy panels, especially ones that don't really use the visual to help aid the dialogue. But here, I think the visual is effective because it shows Uryu as small as he's probably been presented, with still like detail and not being just shown in like a comedic way. Um, and we get a little bit more of Orihime being reticent about, her own failures to accomplish as much, right? Like, with Tsubaki being stricken as he was, you have to wonder where Orihime is kind of mentally, um, because her intent is proven a little bit too weak, right? This is the full extent of what she can do, but Uryu still seems like he doesn't have an upper limit defined yet. And again, this first string of battles that we have against a number of different Shikai wielding, lower seats. I say lower seats. I mean they're still like fourth, fifth, third, right? Um, but non vice captain, non captain interactions, I think is really again meant to benchmark where our characters are at, and so we get the sense that Orihime is not going to be able to kind of keep up throughout this arc and maybe be a liability, which she feels that, and that's pretty particularly hard for her because her whole defiant moment with Tatsuki was, I'm not going to be a liability. I'm going to be the one that wields the power now. I'm going to be the one to stand up, for the things that I believe in, rather than just letting somebody else do that for me. Right? And so it can maybe be a little bit frustrating to see her put back into a like relegated spot of being less powerful. But at the end of the day, that was going to happen anyway. It's not like Orihime was going to become more powerful than everyone in the Soul Society. So, eventually she'd have to reconcile with that one way or another. But it is unfortunate that it comes so early within this arc. And so it leaves her without a ton, other than to kind of meditate on that and see where she grows from there. Of course, we parse back to this rather comedic moment where Ganju's being chased. And I love the, back and forth about him being ugly and Ganju crying. And I love how I adore how peppy he gets about running into Ichigo, and then Ichigo, of course, has 1,001 guys chasing him. I do really love some of these expressions. This thing. I don't like. I feel like the eye bulging, huge like spit take or like jaw drop. For whatever reason, that feels like such like a quintessential Shonen Jump gag. I want to attribute it I don't know that One Piece does this much, so it feels very One Piece to me. Um, but I haven't read One Piece in years, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But I mean, like, it's definitely some sort of like nonsense, right? Or seems like something you can see in like something like Zatch Bell. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. I don't know how well it works for me as a gag, but I do like. I'm drawn much more into this side of the page, and all these guys kind of flying out and hitting the wall, and their expressions. I think that's good stuff. Of course, you know, Ichigo does run in. I love this panel here where they kind of clash and then they start brawling with the other guy's pursuers. I think it's just a great moment, and I love Ichigo getting hype and warning Ganju to duck as he slings Zangetsu off of his back and comes for the big slash. It's all good stuff, right? Here we get introduced to another character that we have not met yet. These are fourth division characters, right? So we could see the flower for the division as well as the number on their little packs that they're carrying. Um, but yeah, they're the fourth company, right? With their Unohana relief crew. So we have this group of sort of perhaps like healers, right? People that are being sent out. Um, they're going out. They're the first 6 and 14 squads, and they're going to arrive, perhaps to help people apply some sort of support. I do like this mobilization that they have, and I do like that we transition to this kind of new character, almost this point of view as he comes in here. Um, and then we have our protagonist bickering. I don't know what's going on with this grandfather guy. I kind of wish that we got to see more of these just gnarly Soul Reapers, because it's very easy to read Bleach, and whenever you think about a Soul Reaper, you think about like the astute, the nobles. You think about the captains. You think about Byakuya Kuchiki and his beautiful hair noodles. You think about Renji and his over the top sort of pineapple head. You think about Ichimaru Gin and his ways. But you don't think about like you know this guy with his overbite, like our grandma over here. I don't know. There's certainly a lot of Soul Reaper designs that I like. And I think that the Grunt Soul Reaper is essentially just like a thug. It's good stuff for me, and it's kind of easy to overlook or forget about. Um, Here, of course, we get this comedic bit where our new character sort of stumbles into the rest of the crowd and sort of falls forward. And as he falls out of the group, the others decide to assumably take him hostage. And that's the end of our chapter, right? And we do get confirmation of Tsubaki being recovered, of being put into that sort of rejection shield there, as we have the other two. Is it, geez, I can't remember the ones that are for the rejection. Hinagiku Lily, maybe? Anyway. No, it's Bygone Lily. It's oh boy. Bygone and Lily are part of the three character chant for the shield, this Santen Kaishun, I think. Kashun. Oh boy, I can't remember all of Orihime's technique names, much less her fairy names. There's a whole bunch of them. It's all of like 6 characters. Can't do it. Can't be asked. But I remember Tsubaki. He's the one that does the attack. Anyway, that's it for this chapter. I do feel like overall I like the art in this chapter a lot. I think it's very effective. I really like the gags and the expressions on these characters' faces. This new guy that we get introduced to, you have a real sense of who he is, like off of the bat. Talking about his design, I mean, you get the sense, he's a little hapless, perhaps. Is that how I pronounce words? You got the bags under the eyes. He's very, very large eyes. He's not very, we've been seeing characters with very flamboyant styles or over the top, different kinds of haircuts or makeup or whatever. And this guy's just kind of got, regular guy hair. His sword, his Zanpakuto, is pretty nondescript. He just seems like a guy, clumsy, half-lidded guy. And so I do like the way he looks compared to everyone else it's good stuff, because he's got such a normal guy look, but everyone else is so incredibly extra that it helps make him maybe stand out. Anyway, talking about the chapter as a whole, kind of my take on it, my personal response. Yeah, it's one that I like. I do really. There's a couple things that I really enjoy about showing off Uryu's powers. I wish that Orihime wasn't, as like I said, relegated this early. Though whether or not she's able to do more within this arc, we'll get to see, right? But but it does feel like it's a little bit premature to kind of define her as like the one that kind of isn't able out of the whole group. You know, this is like her breaking point, which is eh. Um, but I do like the interactions that we get out of that, and that it sort of puts Orihime into a self-critical place that she might not have been in now, because she's finally like pursuing power and the use of it and coming to understand what that means, right? So maybe it fits a little bit better for her than on first glance. Um, I'm totally okay with Jirobo getting absolutely like everything short of executed, forced to live a life of poverty as he falls out of the Shinigami outfit and into the rest of the world's squalor. Anyway, um, I mean, I imagine he'd just get executed, right? But yeah, Soul Society laws. Who knows them? Rukia does, and she still disobeyed them. So, yeah. But yeah, and then of course I do love the sort of jump back that we get, those comedic beats between Ganju and Ichigo, as well as them fighting kind of as a group. I think is cool. I wish we got a little bit more of that, but what we got I think was very satisfying, and we have a lead into the next chapters, of course. So all in all, I think it's an efficient chapter. It's sort of, while the previous chapter did tend to kind of establish that Uryu has won this fight, this really establishes his dominance over his opponent, and so it leaves us kind of hungry for like what's going to come next for Uryu and Orihime as like a little group. And of course we're still left to wonder about Chad, but it's Chad. He'll be fine. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you noticed anything that I didn't, if there's anything you wanted to talk about in this chapter that I didn't bring up, please feel free to let me know in the comments. As always, whenever discussing spoilers, be sure to tag your comment as a spoiler-related comment first. Just say at the beginning of your comment. But speaking of, we're going to get into the spoilers for this chapter and how this connects to the rest of the manga. So let's discuss that. First things first. Jirobo obviously never shows up again. This guy's out of commission. Now, I think that there is sort of something to be said, going forward. I like this idea of like tragic meetings, right, in combat. We certainly get that a lot, where it seems like, a character is just perfectly matched against another character. It's convenient, like narratively, that you should run into me, haha. But I think there's enough guy has to fight guy that they don't have, it's interesting. Like, I don't mind characters lampshading it a little bit, Um, but yeah, it's unfortunate that certain characters would have to fight or other certain characters. I don't know. That comes up with Uryu a few times for sure. Um, Antithesis. I'm just thinking of especially of walking certain fated paths underneath the Quincy King. As far as this whole can of worms about whether or not Uryu is sexist, I think he's picking on something that's maybe certainly there, and he has his interpretation of it. But I think maybe I'll read this. I tend to read this as more of Uryu just being vindictive against Shinigami and maybe inventing rationale for really wanting to punish them or justify his own severity. Because he could be like, oh well, you're a wicked person, right? I love that he does. That he throws back that regret thing. I don't know that regret really comes up that much, later. There's certainly the whole pride of the Quincy deal that becomes highlighted later on. But one thing that I did want to mention, I think it's a bit strange that, and I brought this up before, that Uryu, of course, can do this strike to the soul sleep and the spirit chain or whatever, and that he's capable of landing this blow, but doesn't do that ever again in the series, with the sole exception of essentially the Soul King, right? But I do like that it does get brought up again, sort of with Ryukin awakening Uryu's Quincy abilities too after he uses the Sandray glove. So like, I don't know. I'm okay with there not just being a perfect kill technique that comes up in every fight. I tend to interpret it as Uryu is playing. He's fighting against opponents that he would not be able to defeat or land those blows on as acutely as he has here, right? So it works for me. Um, but I'm sure that there are people that will bring up like, well, why doesn't Uryu just do this every fight and win every single battle? Why is there even, why doesn't this come up more? Because we know Byakuya can do it. It's like, yeah, well, yes, if you could get 2 good stabs on any opponent, you could probably win the fight. Like, that's not the issue. Not in a lot of these fights that they get engaged in. So, eh. I'm trying to think of anything else that I really wanted to speak towards. I know that we do later get some arcs where both Orihime and Chad really get this like, okay, well, we need to take seriously this training to stand alongside Ichigo. They constantly have that sort of treadmill going on, and I don't know, like I think that there's some people that are upset that they kind of feel like they get shafted, that they don't get enough power, or that they can't really stand on their own, that their characters are sort of defined by being lesser than. And I'm sort of a mixed mind of it. Like, yes, I would want more from those characters. I like Orihime and Chad as characters. But on the same hand, I really like the idea of, these characters having to grapple with, like, what do you do whenever someone that close to you is on such another level and you can't support them in the ways that you want to? What do you do whenever you're put in these positions? And I think it's a very human thing, right? Where, like, you don't have the means to keep up with somebody or to do what you want to kind of affect the future you want. And so, is that a failing on your part? Like, is that just circumstance? What do you realistically do coming out of that? And I think this is something that the manga grapples with a little bit, but doesn't ultimately tackle and take down and pin. And I wish it did. I really do wish it did, because there's some neat stuff there that kind of doesn't get fruitfully resolved for me, or it didn't, at least on an initial read. Maybe I'll pick up more of it on this one. Who knows? Of course, I don't know that I have really anything to say other than, yeah, team up fights are cool. I really wish we had more of those. But again, the final fight in Bleach is a big team up fight, so maybe I do get what I wanted. I know that this guy with the ridiculous like haircut and the shades is actually a named recurring character. I just don't know. I don't remember his name. Hanataro, though, our good boy. He finally makes the fray. I wish that any of these other background guys actually stuck around or were like somebody important, because they're not really, as far as I know. The pretty hair guy, I think, is somebody that comes up in something. Same thing with these random Thug Shinigami, but you can't. I wonder if like some of them, their designs get reused even like way later on. If you could see like, oh, Thug Shinigami is still sticking around. Granny Thug still in the mix. Certainly, we get that with the characters in the lab with Mayuri, right? But moreover in the lab with Akon. But those characters are named, or at least some of them are. Yeah. Not a lot else to say. I do like that the Omake provides that Tsubaki is getting reject healed. That's nice. Yeah, I don't really have a ton of spoilers for this one, folks. I don't really have a lot of things to connect to. There is sort of something to say about, I guess I will, one last thing, kind of talk about Hanataro and taking a hostage of like the enemy camp, are really having like the defector. That's a kind of common trope throughout the entirety of Bleach, that there is always that defector character that comes to really have a closer connection to Ichigo, that highlights Ichigo's capacity to connect to people. And I mean, we've seen it with Ganju to an extent, but here we're going to see it with Hanataro as well. And later on, we'll even get that with characters like Grimjow, or well, before Grimjow, Nell, Nellie L. And then later on, we'll see that in even Thousand Year Blood War arc. There are a few. I'm trying to think of who ends up citing. I don't know that Ichigo really personally affects people though in that arc. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we don't really have the traitor turncoat fella as much, but I mean that's also an arc where we have characters like Grimjow and we have these other sort of payoffs for people showing up. So I don't know. Nevertheless, the whole winning over someone of the rival faction, especially someone that's kind of helpless or hapeless, like Nell or like Hamataro or like Ganju, even to an extent, is pretty on brand for Bleach. And so there's something there that Kuba's certainly trying to do. And like I said, I think it has something to do with Ichigo's capacity for his humanity and for thinking about and reaching out to others. Yeah. That's it. That's all I gotta say. So yeah, that's it for this chapter. Thank you so much for watching this one. Thank you for watching the entirety of the video, sticking with it throughout the whole thing. As always, please do give the video a like if you've gotten this far. Do subscribe to the channel if this isn't your first rodeo. And if it is your first rodeo, well, welcome to the rodeo. I hope you enjoy your stay. If you do want to support the channel in a different way, you can always support on Patreon. For as little as $1, you can have your name show up in this space right now. Ooh, fancy. Yes. Don't you want it? And the people that are noted here are the folks that are supporting me as of this episode being made. So I do want to send a shout out to all of you. It's really sweet. Thank you. And everyone else, well, thank you too. As always, this has been Karker Gold, reminding you, spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.